showed you earlier. Now there's some additional, more formal mathematical analyses you can do that are the following. The left-hand graph shows the mean smoking cluster size, and the observed mean smoking cluster size, if you see the top line, is roughly flat across the waves of the study over the 30-year period. That means the size of the clusters that the smokers are in has stayed about constant across time. First fact. The second fact is that the prevalence of smoking has declined from about 65% to 20% in this 30-year period. So the total number of smokers has declined radically, even if the cluster size has remained approximately the same. What would that tell you? How's a way to square those two observations? Yeah, what we think is happening is that whole groups of people are quitting in droves. Entire clusters of smokers are dropping out of the network together. It's not willy-nilly people are just quitting to smoking on their own, at random, unconnected from other individuals. Local norms within this social fabric change, militating against smoking in one location, and people quit together. It's as if your quitting decision is not just about what you want to do, but about what the people that you're near you, most of whom you don't even know, what they're deciding to do at the same time. So we think that what this provides is evidence for people quitting in droves. The cluster size stays relatively constant, even as the population prevalence of smoking is declining. Now, in addition, another piece of information that's also obvious, apparent from some analyses, is the following. You can compute something known as the eigenvector centrality. That's a way of summarizing mathematically how centrally located are the people in the network. For example, if you look at the network picture, individuals that are located in the center would have a higher centrality number than individuals that are located at the periphery, okay? It's the same kind of system that Google uses in its PageRank system to identify which are the most salient or important nodes in the World Wide Web. And what we find is that the non-smokers' centrality in the blue at the top remains roughly constant, whereas the centrality of the smokers declines across time. This just firms up the observation that the smokers are being pushed to the periphery of the network. Right? They're moving to the side, they're being marginalized, as it was, not just statistically, but also conceptually. Finally, analyses similar to those that we've done for obesity show a dyadic spread in smoking cessation. But the dynamics of this spread of smoking were such that educated people both responded to alter smoking cessation more readily and were more influential in getting others to stop smoking. What we find in these analyses is the following. If I'm deciding whether or not to quit smoking, and Denise quits, and she's highly educated, versus Denise quits and she's not highly educated, I'm much more likely to copy her if she's more educated. And similarly, if Denise quits smoking, and now you're looking at me, if I'm more educated, I'm more sensitive to the stimulus of an alter quitting if I'm more educated than if I'm less educated. It's a kind of diffusion of innovation. Like other kinds of things in our society, more educated individuals are earlier adopters of the innovation of smoking cessation. Now, we're beginning to explore other kinds of things, exploiting other aspects of our data. For example, we're looking at food consumption, exercise, drinking, and we're beginning to examine some candidate mechanisms for the spread of obesity. This is an image of banana eating in the offspring cohort. Now we color you yellow if you eat more than one banana per day. Otherwise, we color you red. And if you look here, you can see clusters of banana eaters and non-banana eaters. Sometimes these clusters are right next to each other, and they live very peacefully without any conflict in the network in terms of banana eating and non-banana eating. And we're beginning to think about looking at this in more detail. We've also started looking at such phenomena as the spread of happiness. Now, emotional contagion is known to occur over dyads and over short time intervals. So many of you, for example, know that you might instinctively smile at someone in the subway. You know, a stranger smiles at you and you smile back. This is a very human, a very evolutionarily adaptive kind of response. We also know from evolutionary biology that it makes sense for us to copy the emotions of the people near us. So why would it make sense if you see a member of your species that's afraid, why would it make sense for you to become afraid?
they're probably noticing something that you should be noticing.
Yeah, they're seeing a predator, and it's good for you to, oh my God, you're afraid. Darn, I better get afraid too and respond accordingly, okay? So there's some evolutionary advantage to us copying. Emotions are a kind of way of communicating one person to another. And if you think about that, if you think about the social role of emotions, reflect on this fact. Most of the emotions that we have, we show. Why would we show our emotions if the purpose of them was not to communicate information to other individuals, right? And that, in turn, begs a set of questions about social interaction. Why don't we just feel our emotions? Why do we demonstrate our anger or our joy or our fear or whatever it is that we demonstrate? So it's been shown that happiness can spread over dyads and over short intervals of time. It's been shown before. Some other very clever experiments that have been done by some economists that randomize waitresses to smile at their customers versus not smile at their customers. And then they would measure, because they're economists, the amount of tips that the waitress got at the end of the day. And this was a way of summarizing the effect of service with a smile. And I can't remember the precise results, but it was like twice the tips from just smiling when you serve your customers versus not smiling. So there's a sort of a kind of cottage industry of literature in this area, which we wanted to extend by looking at whether emotions could spread not just dyadically, but hyperdyadically across greater social expanses, and also to see whether emotions could last, the spread could last more than just the fleeting, contagious smiling or tipping, but longer periods of time. And sure enough, what we find is we find clusters of unhappy and happy people in the Framingham Heart Study Network. Here, if you're unhappy, we color you blue. And if you're happy, we color you yellow. And in between, we color you green. And again, you can see clusters of happy and unhappy people within the network. You can also see that the unhappy people tend to be located at the periphery of the network, right? They're not central. They're kind of at the periphery of the network. And we find that the happiness in an individual is associated with the happiness of people, again, up to 3 degrees removed from them in the social network. So your happiness depends not just on the happiness of the people you know, but also on the happiness of the people that they know, and also in turn on the happiness of the people that they know. So it's like you're in some kind of a groove, some kind of a happy space within the social network. And we imagined when we did this work that there might be some kind of yin and yang, some endless competition between happiness and unhappiness in this kind of social fabric. Blinking happiness, and blinking unhappiness, a kind of battle at the margins between happiness and unhappiness in the network. Similar analyses to those that we've already done document that there is a spread of happiness in the network, and we also find that happy people have higher network centrality. That means they tend to be more likely to be in the middle of the network, have larger networks, and are located in larger clusters of happy people. So it's not just that you know more people if you're happy, but you know more people who are happy if you are happy. Now, these results are even more remarkable considering that happiness appears to require physical proximity, and because it also appears to decay with time. So there's something known as the hedonic treadmill, this notion that in order to make you happy, I have to keep giving you more and more good stuff. So at some point you think, oh, if I could just get an ace this examination, or if I could just get a paper in the New England Journal, I'd really be happy. Or if I could, win the lottery, then I'd be happy. But then when we inquire after you ace the exam or you get the paper in the New England Journal or you win the lottery, we ask you a year or 2 later, you're no happier than you were before that thing happened. And in fact, even more perplexing, if you survey people like my colleague Peter Ubel has at Michigan, survey people who are paralyzed, who have lost an extremity, their happiness is not really much lower, if at all, than the happiness of people who haven't suffered those kinds of calamities. Now that's a very counter-normative from a point of view of an economist, or perhaps even any kind of rational thinker, a kind of counter-normative kind of proposition. That here you are, you would look at someone, you would say, if I asked you, how unhappy would you be if you became paralyzed, you would say, pretty unhappy. But then I go survey people who are paralyzed and they say, I'm not unhappy. So what's going on there? Do people adapt to their circumstances? Or if I said to you, how happy would you be if you win the lottery, you'd say, I'd be ecstatic, but you go survey lottery winners and they're not, after a year or 2 years, they're not as happy as they were, as you would think they were. So we were curious to see if all these kinds of same phenomena obtained here, if Denise's happiness makes me happy, well, how long am I happy after Denise gets happy? Is it, for just a month that I'm happy because she's happy, or a year, or what happens? And in fact, what we find is that I'm only happy for about 1.5 years. So if Denise becomes happy, it makes me happy. But after a while, I'm like, okay, what else is new? Denise is happy. Enough already. And so you see that, it takes, if she's happy, I'm 40% more likely to be happy for the first 6 months, 30%